Okay. This is roughly part three. Continuing on the history of Caligula, uh, the emperor. His early reign. Okay. When Tiberius died on the 16th of March, 37 AD, his estate and the titles of the Principate were left to Caligula and Tiberius' own grandson, Gemellus, who were to serve as joint heirs. Although Tiberius was 78 and on his deathbed, some ancient historians still conjecture that he was murdered. Tacitus writes that the Praetorian prefect Macro smothered Tiberius with a pillow to hasten Caligula's ascension, much to the joy of the Roman people, while Suetonius writes that Caligula may have carried out the killing, though this is not recorded by any other ancient historian. Seneca the Elder and Philo, who both wrote during Tiberius's reign, as well as Josephus, record Tiberius as dying a natural death. Backed by Macro, Caligula had Tiberius's will nullified with regards to Gemellus on grounds of insanity, but otherwise carried out Tiberius' wishes. Caligula accepted the powers of the Principate as conferred by the Senate and entered Rome on 28th of March amid a crowd that hailed him as our baby and our star. Among other nicknames, Caligula is described as the first emperor who was admired by everyone in all the world from the rising to the setting sun. Caligula was loved by many for being the beloved son of the popular Germanicus, and because he was not Tiberius. It was said by Suetonius that over 160,000 animals were sacrificed during 3 months of public rejoicing to usher in the new reign. Philo described the first 7 months of Caligula's reign as completely blissful. Alright, this is a picture here depicting Caligula and some of his mother and brother. Caligula depositing the ashes of his mother and brother in the tomb of his ancestors by Eustache Lesueur, 1647. This is a painting that is painted by this guy here. Okay, let us go on to some more of his stuff. Caligula's first act were said to be generous in spirit, though many were political in nature. To gain support, he granted bonuses to those in the military, including the Praetorian Guard, city troops, and the army outside Italy. He destroyed Tiberius's treason papers, declared that treason trials were a thing of the past, and recalled those who had been sent into exile. He helped those who had been harmed by the imperial tax system, banished certain sexual deviants, and put on lavish spectacles for the public, such as gladiator battles. Caligula collected and brought back the bones of his mothers and of his brothers and deposited their remains in the tomb of Augustus. In October 37 AD, Caligula fell seriously ill, or perhaps was poisoned. He recovered from his illness soon thereafter, but many believe that the young emperor had changed into a diabolical mind as he started to kill off or exile those who were close to him or whom he saw as a serious threat. Perhaps his illness reminded him of his mortality and the desires of others to advance in his place. He had his cousin and adopted son Tiberius Gemellus executed, and an act that outraged Caligula's and Gemellus' mutual grandmother, Antonia Minor. She is said to have committed suicide, although Suetonius hints that Caligula actually poisoned her. He had his father-in-law Marcus Junius Salinus and his brother-in-law Marcus Lepidus executed as well. His uncle Claudius was spared only because Caligula kept him as a laughingstock. His favorite sister Julio Drusilla died in 38 AD of a fever. His other two sisters, Lavilla and Agrippina the younger, were exiled. He hated the fact that he was the grandson of Agrippa and slandered Augustus by repeating a falsehood that his mother was actually the result of an incestuous relationship between Augustus and his daughter Julia the elder. Public reform. In AD 38, Caligula focused his attention on political and public reform. He published the accounts of public funds which had not been made public during the reign of Tiberius. He ended those who lost property in fires, abolished certain taxes, and gave out prizes to the public at gymnastic events. He allowed new members into the equestrian and senatorial orders. Perhaps most significantly, he restored the practice of democratic elections. Cassius Dio said that this act, though delighting the rebel, grieved the sensible, who stopped to reflect that if the offices should fall once more into the hands of the many, many disasters would result. During the same year, though, Caligula was criticized for executing people without full trials and for forcing his helper Marco to commit suicide. Financial crisis and famine. According to Cassius Dio, a financial crisis emerged in AD 39. Suetonius places the beginning of his crisis in AD 38. Caligula's political payments for support, generosity, and extravagance had exhausted the state's treasury. Ancient historians state that Caligula began falsely accusing, fining, and even killing individuals for the purpose of seizing their estates. A number of other desperate measures by Caligula are described by historians. In order to gain funds, Caligula asked the public to lend the state money. Caligula levied taxes on lawsuits, marriage, and prostitution. Caligula began auctioning the lives of the gladiators at shows. Wills that left items to Tiberius were reinterpreted to leave the items instead to Caligula. Centurions who had acquired property during plundering were forced to turn over spoils to the state. The current and past highway commissioners were accused of incompetence and embezzlement and forced to repay money. According to Suetonius, in the first year of Caligula's reign, he squandered 2,700,000,000 sesterces that Tiberius had amassed. His nephew Nero Caesar both envied and admired the fact that Gaius had run through the vast wealth Tiberius had left him in so short a time. A brief famine of unknown size occurred, perhaps caused by this financial crisis, but according to Suetonius, a result of Caligula's seizure of public carriages. According to Seneca, because grain imports were distributed by Caligula's using grain boats for a pontoon bridge. Construction. Despite financial difficulties, Caligula embarked on a number of construction projects during his reign. Some were for the public good, while others were for himself. Josephus describes Caligula's improvements to the harbors at Rhegium and Sicily, allowing increased grain imports from Egypt as his greatest contributions. These improvements may have been made in response to the famine. Caligula completed the temple of Augustus and the theater of Pompey, and began an amphitheater beside the Sepata. He had the imperial palace expanded. He began the aqueducts Aqua Claudia and Annio Novus, which Pliny the Elder considered engineering marvels. He built a large racetrack known as the Circus of Gaius and Nero, and had an Egyptian obelisk now known as the Vatican obelisk transported by sea and erected in the middle of Rome. Syracuse, at Syracuse, he repaired the city walls and the temples of the gods. He had new roads built and pushed to keep roads in good condition. He had planned to rebuild the palace of Polycrates at Samos, to finish the temple of Didymaeon Apollo at Ephesus, and to found a city high up in the Alps. He planned to dig a canal through the Isthmus in Greece and sent a chief centurion to survey the work. In 39 AD, Caligula performed a spectacular stunt by ordering a temporary floating bridge to be built using ships as pontoons, stretching for over 2 miles from the resort of Baiae to the neighboring port of Puteoli. It was said that the bridge was to rival that of Persian King Xerxes' crossing of the Hellespont. Caligula, who could not swim, then proceeded to ride his favorite horse Incitatus across, wearing the breastplate of Alexander the Great. This act was in defiance of a prediction by Tiberius Soothsayers, Thrasyllus of Mendes, that Caligula had no more chance of becoming emperor than of riding a horse across the Bay of Baiae. Caligula had two large ships constructed for himself, which were recovered from the bottom of Lake Nemi during the dictatorship of Benito Mussolini. Let us read it again. Caligula had large ships constructed for himself, which were recovered from the bottom of Lake Nemi during the dictatorship of Benito Mussolini. He said, This is the hull of one of the two ships recovered from Lake Nemi during the 1930s. This massive vessel served as an elaborate floating palace to the emperor. Let us make an expansion here. Oh, that was pretty large, man. Look at the little guy right here. Man, this was large. That was large. Caligula, yeah, I read that part. Said, these ships are among the largest vessels in the ancient world. The smaller ship was designed as a temple dedicated to Diana. The larger ship was essentially an elaborate floating palace that counted marble floors and plumbing among its amenities. 13 years after being raised, the ships were burnt during an attack in the Second World War, and almost nothing remains of the hulls, though many archaeological treasures remain intact in the museum at Lake Nemi and in the Museo Nazionale Romano, Palazzo Massimo at Rome. He said, feud with the Senate. In AD 39, relationships between Caligula and the Roman Senate deteriorated. The subject for their disagreement is unknown. A number of factors, though, aggravated this feud. The Senate had become accustomed to ruling without an emperor between the departure of Tiberius for Capri in AD 26 and Caligula's accession. Additionally, Tiberius's treason trials had eliminated a number of pro-Julian senators such as Asinius Gallus. Caligula reviewed Tiberius's record of treason trials and decided that numerous senators, based on their actions during these trials, were not trustworthy. He ordered a new set of investigations and trials. He replaced the consul and had several senators put to death. Suetonius reports that other senators were degraded by being forced to wait on him and run beside his chariot. Soon after his break with the Senate, Caligula was met with a number of additional conspiracies against him. A conspiracy involving his brother-in-law was foiled in late AD 39. Soon afterwards, the governor of Germany, Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus Gaetulicus, was executed for connections to a conspiracy. Western expansion. Alright, I will continue this in part 4 because I think I've lapsed roughly 15 minutes or over 15 minutes, so let me stop this right now. I'll continue in part 4.